Welcome back to Insights at DDLynn Designs, a unique twist in the ancient art of wire. This is DDLynn, and I'm really excited today. We're going to be making a version of this really cute earring. And I'm not sure if I'm going to duplicate it like this because for those of you that have been following my channel for a while now, I get a bit bored doing the same thing over. So I'll think about it as I'm going, but we're going to be making the basic concept. We're going to be adding beads, and we're also going to be adding a bead on the bottom, and we're going to be doing a wrap around that bead. And this is a very common, you will see this used in so many different ways, and there are many different techniques to wrap a bead. You can actually do a coil on each side and make it a link for in between chains, which I've done before, but today we're going to be adding it as a drop. And I want to play with my camera a little bit. Wow, what a difference, huh? I won't have to be moving around a lot there, huh? So that made a big deal there. So anyways, you guys, you know me, for those of you that have been watching me. So before we get started, if you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. It takes 1 second to leave me a thumbs up. Your comments and feedback are everything to me. So let me know what you think, what you like, what you're interested in. So let's get started. So the first thing I've done is I brought out a ring dowel. You can use anything to shape your wire because we're going to be shaping our wire into this really pretty V shape. And then it's almost like an off centered swirl here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with, these are the materials. I'm using 28 gauge weaving wire. I'm using, and I just lost my amethyst bead, so I'll get another one out. I'm using 2 pieces of 18 gauge square wire and 6 inches of 20 gauge half round wire and 6 inches of 22 gauge half round wire. So here's a little note. You can use the same size. I like dimension. So here I used a 20 gauge half round. And here, I used a 22 gauge because I have a smaller working space. But you can also use weaving wire. It doesn't have to be exact. As I always recommend to everybody, really follow technique. That's what saved me in this beautiful ancient art of wire, was learning how to make the loops and all the, just bending wire on a 90-degree angle and making it look as good as someone else's. That, I mean, those are the things that I really focused on. So I make my own ear hooks, which we'll be making today. And of course, I like to use twisted jump rings because they are really strong. We're also going to be using about 5.5 inches or 5 inches of a 20 gauge round wire to wrap our bead. So I've already pre-wrapped my 6mm amethyst bead here. So I'm going to move my wires out of the way first. We're going to be using a various size of copper beads, and it's really up to you. I have 2mm, 4mm, and 5mm beads in here. So I'm going to get all that out of the way so it's not a distraction right now. And I'm going to grab me another 6mm amethyst bead because I heard that other one fall on the floor. And the first thing I'm going to do is wrap my bead. You want to do, so here's a hint. And these are really great tips. And I'm really big about tips, techniques to save you a lot of time and frustration. I go through a tremendous amount of detail. So you can't see me. I'm out of frame right now. I'm cutting myself 5 inches of 20 gauge round wire. And I'm actually standing up. I'm going to sit down. I hope I stay within my little frames here. If you see my little stickies, I'm actually thinking of moving this back a little bit, so bear with me a moment here. So I'm just going to find my center point, and I'm going to scoot up in my chair of my wire. So I'm just going to eye it. I'm also going to grab myself some flat nose. These are Xuron. I use them a lot. They're a wider and stronger jawed plier. And so the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to bend my wire all halfway around my stone like that. Then I'm going to get my plier here, and I kind of want it flush against my stone a little bit more. Now make sure that your stone is strong enough for you to use your pliers on as an anchor without breaking it. So amethyst is really hard on the Mohs scale, and I believe the Mohs scale is from 1 to 10, 1 being softest, 10 being hardest on all stones. So like kyanite, really soft. So you'd have to be super careful because it's got a lot of shard and flake in it. Okay, so just a little tip there. And then I'm going to bring it around, all the way around to the top here. Now my other one, I'm going to bring in the opposite direction. So I'm going in the opposite direction. I'm going to bring that around. And before I come all the way around, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm anchoring off that gemstone. I'm trying to flatten that little arc against my bead so you don't see it as much. Now we're going to wrap all the way around, coming to the top here, because I want to hide that loop. And you can make as many wraps as you want. And I'm going to do the same thing on the back, and I'm going in the opposite direction, and I want to hide that loop. Now I'm going to come around again. And I'm just following it around. I'm going to stop right there and think about how much more I want to go. And I'm going to come around again. And I'm thinking I like that. I like more wraps like that. So you can make as many wraps as you like. And by the way, if you're new to my channel, I do things as I go. So I don't draw. And everything's in my head. And of course, this concept is a learned concept by all of us. I know some people are very touchy out there about those of us using someone else's design. I can guarantee you this isn't somebody's specific design. The wrapping beads have been around for thousands of years, so we're all learning from each other. So anytime I make anything on my own, like this earring, I didn't see this earring. I didn't see anybody make this earring. I just did this last night. I was thinking I want to make a different earring pattern. Maybe I'll start with this shape and then add some beads here, and I just add as I go. So is this my design? Yes. But do I say that I'm going to take 100% credit? No, because I learned how to bend wire from those that went before me. I learned how to make loops from those that went before me. So all of us are learning from each other. So there's my little morning sermon. So anyways, just want to plug that out there because every once in a while I'll get some interesting comments. Well, I've seen that somewhere else. Well, of course you've seen it somewhere else. You're going to see it somewhere else a million times, beads wrapped like this. You're not going to see this until after I post this tutorial today because I haven't seen this somewhere else. I made it last night, but that's okay. You'll see something similar to it. Anyways, just wanted to put that out there. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this wire right here straight up over the back. Then I'm going to bring this wire right here across, and I'm just going to bend it. I'm hoping I'm in frame. And I'm going to wrap it around that wire that I bent around the back. And I'm just wrapping it around the neck. And as I get to the neck right here, I'm going to cut it. Then I'm going to get these pliers to squeeze the wire, and it's much easier to squeeze a very small piece of wire, and here's another tip and technique, with a wider jawed plier, if you can get it in there, than trying to secure it with a very thin plier. Your pliers tend to slide off the wire very easily, so when working with tiny little spaces and little bits of wire, I have so much more control, and I also don't have to use as much pressure to turn that wire in. So you should have your wire hiding in the back now. And you should have your bead like this. The reason why we're doing the bead first is because we're going to anchor it off our earring design before we close everything off. We want it hanging from the bottom, so it's going to be completely connected. So now I'm going to just create a loop. And I'm just, now this is my front because my wire is going around the back. So I'm going to bend that loop towards me because I want the bend in the front. And I'm going to leave myself a little gap space so that I can wrap my wire around there a couple of times. If you haven't used 6-step bail making pliers, they have 6 steps. You can get them anywhere. So I'm going to be using my second step, and I'm turning the bend away from me, and I'm just going to simply swing that in there and bring it over. Then I'm going to turn it up so you can see. Then I'm going to swing my wire away, and to line my loop up, I'm going to rock it in. And then see how quickly 5 inches of wire goes? Then I'm going to turn it away from me, and I'm going to get my needle nose just to hold. And that loop's actually a little, I think a little bigger than I wanted. So I'm just going to rock it back and very gently just give it a little squeeze. That's much better. It's just personal preference. So I don't really need to use my petite nose. I'm going to use my bigger ones. And then I'm just going to pull my wire around. And I would definitely be using, gang, 5 inches to 5.5 inches of wire if you're going to be doing 3 full wraps around your bead. Okay, that just kind of popped into my head. And now I'm just squeezing that around there. And squeezing it around the back. So I just need to squeeze it in a little bit more. And then I'm going to clean it up. Just rocking it in, cleaning that neck up. So there's our second bead. So we have 2 matching beads that we're going to be using hanging off for earrings. Now, I do recommend you can do whatever you want, you guys. These are just tips. You know, when I do something and I'm doing 2 of the same thing, I do a little bit of each at the same time. This, if you're new to wire wrapping, it will save you so many mistakes because that way you can match your work as you're going. So I'm now going to grab my 2 pieces of 18 gauge square wire. They are 6 inches long each. And here's another tip for beginners. I would mark your wire so you always know where your center is. So I am going to just mark my 3-inch. Here's I'm at 6. I'm going to mark my 3. Just so that you have a guide so you know where you want to bend. And I'm going to mark my 3 here. Okay. Now I'm going to get my flat nose pliers. And the first thing I'm going to do is make sure that the flat side of these marks is up. And I'm going to line them up. Looks like I got a mark off a little bit there. And I'm going to put my plier here over both these pliers, and with my thumb and forefinger I'm going to bend them on an angle so that they're completely matching. And you can have this as wide or as narrow as you like. So we have 2 perfectly matching. Now, deciding on the width, how much space do you want for your hoop? So these are measuring out at, let me tell you, with the bead dropping, not including the fish hook, the ear hook, are 2 inches. That's a perfect length earring to me. And it's beautiful on. It's big enough to grab your attention, doesn't drop and hit the neck, although some girls really like their earrings hitting the neck. But it's a really good middle of the road size, in my opinion. So now we've got 2 matching. So I know that I want a wider girth on my shape. So I'm going to work off the number 12, or you could do 14 on your ring mandrel. You could also use, let me show you some other tips and tricks. You could use your hammer. Even though it's not perfectly round, you would want to make sure that you started off on the bottom because you need to be able to slide this off. Now that's pretty big. That's probably about 3 inches there. And we're going to be hammering today as well. This is I believe a 3.75 inch in circumference dowel. It's just an old piece of beat up dowel that I've had. So there's lots of things. Look around your house. You don't have to have a ring mandrel. You could use your bead. So here's more tips and tricks. Your bead holder. What about medicine bottles? You guys, I save a million different medicine bottles, jam jars. Here's a little medicine bottle. And this one might be perfect. It looks about 2 inches. So you could come, that actually looks perfect to me. You could literally come off a medicine bottle, which I think I'm going to do today. So all I'm going to do, because I want you to see this, and I don't know how I can get you to see this with that medicine bottle. Let me stand up. Is I know what my center is, so it might be easier this way. Let me turn it this way so you're not looking at that puppy paw print for the cap. You want to make sure it's centered, and you want to squeeze your wires in. You want to squeeze them in. And then you want to cross them over. And I'm just going to cross them over. Okay? And let's see how that looks. That looks really, really good. So we're going to do the other one, the same thing. And this is what I mean by doing both at the same time. And I'm holding my fingers on the outside, and I'm squeezing it in. And then I'm going to cross them over and push them down. And hopefully they are the same, and they are perfectly matched. So again, this is why we use, or why we do both at the same time. So now, depending on how big you want these, if you found that those were too big for you, because these are going to measure out at, without the bead, 1 3/4 inch. So with the bead, it turned out to be a 2-inch earring. So now we're going to be making a loop on the inside here, but we're not going to do that yet until we decide on, do we want to bring these in? Just bringing mine in a little bit. And then we're going to hammer this because we want it nice and strong. It looks like that one squeezed in a little bit more. There we go. That is definitely matching now. So one of these wires we're going to be turning in, and the other wire we're going to be turning over. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to hammer these. And let me get this out of the way. So I'm going to get my hammering block. And I'm just going to do one so you can see how I do it. I need to stand up so I can see what I'm doing. It's going to be a little bit noisy. I'm using a flat chasing hammer, and this hammer is pretty beat up, but it still works. I'm going to hold at that X very firmly, and I'm going to start at the bottom, and I'm just dragging the hammer away from me, flattening out that bottom there. And don't worry about the marks, because that's going to be our back side, and we can buff those out. Okay, so just to see what we're doing here. Then I'm going to hammer this side. Just what I'm doing is hardening my wire a little bit. Now, again, I'm trying to make 2 symmetrical pieces. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. And then just harden my wire. Hold that cross together really good, because when you're hammering and you don't hold your wire down firm, it'll change the shape of your wire. So I just want to look at those. Those look pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the arc. Okay, this is the arc of the shape of our teardrop earring. And I'm kind of working like a C. See how I'm doing this? And I kind of want to widen that out a little bit. And then I'm going to do the other side, holding my cross firmly. Don't smash your finger. Let me see how those look. That looks pretty good. I'm going to turn it over because this is going to be my front, and we're going to be rolling this wire in here. So let's do this one. And let's match them up. That looks pretty good to me. So now I'm going to scooch my chair in and get rid of my hammering block and my hammer. And I hope I'm staying in frame in all of this, you guys. Paying attention to my cutoff point here, which means I got to work inside of that. Maybe I need to bring my camera down a little bit. Okay, I hope I'm staying in here. I'm trying my darndest. Okay, that's my front, that's my back. So here's another tip. I'm just going to do it on one. Get yourself a buffing block. This is professional grade. It's my weeder. I use 180 grit. I also use smaller grit, but this works perfect almost across the board. Just clean up that wire really, really good. So it's nice and shiny. Get the marks out. Now if you find it hard to hold it in your hand, here's another tip. Hold it down on your buffing block, but really hold that wire firmly or it can slip and tweak on you. And we don't have this wire closed off yet. It just makes it easier to really buff harder without bending the shape of your wire, and really cleans it up. And if you need to, mark your back. So I know that's my back. If you're just starting out, it's easy to get confused. And we all do. Even when I've been doing this 4 years, April. And I tell you, the felt pen becomes a really good friend. If you don't want to use a felt pen, use tape. If you don't want to use tape, use wire. So let's go ahead and do this, and we're going to duplicate that on the other side. So I'm going to take, so this is my front or my back? See, I already got confused. That's the back. This is my front. So I'm going to take my tweezer nose or flat nose. You can use anything that you want. Sorry, I had to move that out of my way. And I'm going to straighten up this wire. Now, here's another trick or tip. It's really not tricks, you guys. It's techniques and tips. So I want to make sure that I'm center, right, where I'm going to bend my wire. And I want to bend this bent wire in the back. So I'm going to turn it over. And I'm just in my center line. And so here's where I want to bend my wire. And I'm going to bend it from, so I made my mark here. You can either bend on the outside, or you can call this the inside, and this is the outside, or at the top of the mark, below the mark. So I'm going to do right at the top of my mark. I'm going to hold very firmly, and I'm just going to make a 90-degree bend straight up. And we can see how straight that is or crooked that is by going back on our mat, and I know that that's crooked. So I'm just going to, but we'll be making adjustments as we go anyways. Bringing my side in a little bit. And so you would be doing the same thing at the same time on the other wire. So this is my back, and I want to bend this one up. So I'm going to mark it there. This is so, I actually need to turn it around to see where my center is since this is the front. This is my center. Same thing. Just gonna bend it up. You really want to do both at the same time. Okay, so now we're gonna make our loop. So the first thing I'm gonna do to help myself is I'm going just to hold firmly and very gently start bending that wire in. And I'm going to follow the curve of the inside of my earring frame. And again, you want to do both sides. So I'm going to make my life easy, and because I like to work in a certain direction. So let me make sure. I'm just following, tracing the curve of my earring. So let's take a look. So that's pretty good. So obviously that's too long, depending on how much of a loop you want. So I'm gonna cut that. I'm thinking, let's take a look there. I think that will work good. Just want to make sure they're the same. Now you know why we do both again at the same time. Let's line up these cuts simply by putting our earrings together and seeing if the cut matches. And it does not. One's a little bit longer. Do you see that? See this one here? So these are really helpful techniques so that you know you're keeping everything symmetrical. Okay, so now I'm going to open this up just a little bit because I'm going to give myself some working room. And I am going to get my round nose, and these are by Tronics. They're flat on one side and round on the other. The first thing I'm going to do is smash down that tip. I don't want a blunt tip. And I'll show you here in a minute. Do you see that? That's getting a really nice shape on it. Nice point there. And same thing over here. I'm going to open that up. And I'm rolling off the wire and I'm pressing. You can hear me snapping off of it. And there's different ways of doing this. Find what works best for you. Looks like I've kind of flattened my wire up there. So hopefully that will not affect my loop. Do you see what I mean? I kind of flattened it up here on top. Let's see what we got going here. I really want to clean that up. So here's another tip. I don't want any bends in my wire like that. I was holding just a little bit too firmly. Want to keep that nice arc. See that on my bend there? So now before I do anything, I'm going to clean up this end. We're going to hammer anyways, but I want to make sure that if I had any plier marks, that I just soften and clean up that point. Okay, that's better. Now I'm going to grab these very cool pliers that I seldom use. They literally have sizes on them, 2 millimeter, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. But they're heavy duty, and I only use them for specific things. So I'm going to come in on the 4 for me. And I'm going to have to come in this way. And I may not be using them at all. I did my first pair like this differently. I made my loop first. This time I'm making the loop last. And I'm just curling it in. And then I'm going to see how that looks. And it's too far away, so I may not be using those at all. It's good that these happen. So I'm just going to swing that back. There's another technique. If you got too far away from your edge, I kind of want to curl that in more. So I'm going to get away from those. Those aren't working for me. And I want to curl my tip in more. And I'm going to use my number 2. I'm holding very firmly up here on the neck. And I'm going to curl that in. And that's what I wanted. So we need to do the other side. So, get in my best working position. Holding firmly, because I don't want to drag this part of the wire in. I'm just creating a loop, and let's see how we're doing here. And remember, you're going to flip one over, so this is actually my front or my back, or if you see your marks there, then I got to find the one side that I'm going to be working with. So those aren't the same shape, so I'm going to be bringing this in a little bit more. And in hindsight, I should have done these curls first, but that's okay. This one's still got a little bit of a very kind of squared off, and that's from what I did earlier. Yeah, that wire got a little tweaked there, so it's losing its shape a little bit. So what are we going to do here? Let's get down on center. I'm holding this down and bringing it in. When everything's centered here. Let's do the same thing here. Kind of pushing that loop in, rounding it out a little bit more. That's much better, much, much better. These are just little techniques you can use to clean up something that's not matching. So now they would be in this direction. And now they're lining up. You see that? So now we're just going to work on one. So the reason why we made our beads in advance is because we're going to start closing off our wire. So they're going to be down here. So we're going to start adding our beads when we get to the top to where we're going to connect it. We're going to connect these two wires right here together, between here and here. We're going to drop this bead in. We don't need to do it right now, but we will be doing it. So we're going to get all of this out of the way because we're going to strictly be weaving now. And you won't be able to work off the spool. Sorry about my arm there, you guys, but I got my little, I don't know if you can see it. Well, you can't. I'd have to move everything. I have a tool box that holds probably 30, 40 tools in front of me. It's like a rectangle. So let's just get, I don't know what happened to my nippers that I like. Here they are. So I'm going to start with, and it's probably going to be too much, but I'm going to start with about 24 inches of 28 gauge weaving wire. Once you decide on, you know, your left and your right, okay, so I'm going to be working on this side with my weaving wire. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to make, oops, wrong direction, you guys, sorry. Let me come over here. There we go. I'm going to make 3 wraps. Here. And you can make as many as you want. It's your design. I mean, you're coming off my tutorial, but it's really what you see in your mind's eye. If you want more coils there, put some more coils there. And now I'm going to do 3 wraps here, and it's going to be 3 full rotations. So when I'm coming around the back, I'm now working on my 4th rotation. And you want to make sure that your wires are centered. Hope I'm staying in frame here. Okay, so now we're going to start adding beads, and you can add any shape or style or whatever you perceive your design to be. I'm going to start off with 2 millimeter. Now I'm reflecting back the first time I added a bead on a piece of wire. And I remember how frustrated I was because there was a gap and then the bead was loose and moving around on the wire. So here's a really good technique, and everybody has their own. Find what works for you. You want to get that wire almost, that bead almost riding up on your core wire. This is your base core wire or your frame, okay? Almost. You just want to get it as close as possible. Now you're going to hold it super firmly, and you're going to bend almost on an angle. Do you see how I'm pulling this on an angle? And watch that the bead doesn't slide. So I know now, I'm holding my finger against the back. I know that's really firm right there, and I've pulled really hard, and I'm coming around, and I'm going to do 3 rotations. That bead is not moving. It's stiff in there. So I'm going to do 3. So that's 1, 2, and 3. And you'll be duplicating this same exact pattern on the other side. So now I'm going to bring my wire over, which is starting my 4th rotation, and I'm going to add another bead. I'm going to add in, I'm going to show you how to do this again, then I'm going to go off camera and add in my beads until I get to the top, and this is where you're going to have to eye it to where my last bead is in between the top swirl. Don't worry about this one down here. That I connected in later. The top swirl. See this bead right here? It's in between that gap space. So your last bead is going to go here. But I'm going to stop when I get close to this so that I can show you. So let me show you this again, especially for beginners. I know how frustrating it is to have your little beads sliding up and down your wire or dangling. It's just practice. But, so I've got my bead really close to my wire. I'm holding it down firmly. You can't see because I've got my thumb over it. And I am, don't let that bead fly around the back. I am pulling it on an angle so you almost can barely see the wire there. You will always see the wire with bigger beads because you're going to have more space between the frame wire and the bead. But on your tiny little 2 millimeters, you're fine. Now I am really putting pressure on that wire when I was swinging it around the frame. And that wire's in there snug like a bug in a rug. Okay, So I'm going to go off camera and finish bringing my beads up until I get to where we're going to connect this on top. So that's what we've got so far. And I'll be right back. So I wanted to pop back in really quick, and I'm kind of laughing at myself because we're definitely going to have a different design here. I realized as I was doing this, remember as I said earlier, we get confused. I was wrapping my beads, two things I caught. I was wrapping my beads on the wrong side. If you notice here, my beads are coming on this side into the swirl. So that's the first thing I noticed. So we're going to change up the design because I'm not taking this apart. So what we're going to do is we're going to bring a bead in up here to connect it. And you could do beads all the way, you guys. But I just want to let you know that this is so fun. Second thing is I forgot to hammer my swirl. So I want to show you how to do that. I'm going to get my hammering block. And I'm simply going to very gently, because I got my beads here now, I'm going to bend this wire out of the way so I can give myself some room, okay? This is my front, and the reason why I know that is the direction that my wire is going. So I'm going to turn it over like this, and I'm going to lift this wire up a little bit more, and I'm going to get my hammer, and I'm going to hammer that arc. And this wire is kind of in my way, so I may have to really bend it up a little bit more. Just be very careful. I meant to do that in the beginning, but that's good. You can see the things I do where I completely modify everything based on where I'm going. Like I said, I don't draw, so I'm not following a pattern in my mind. So that's better. I still want more hammer here. And so that looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to buff this up, and then I'm going to finish bringing my beads up. And if you did it on the right side that I intended it to be on, it's just going to change the design a little bit. It's still going to be super pretty. I'm just going to clean this up with my buffing block. I don't want any edges or sharp edges. I want everything smooth and soft. I want the edges soft. Okay, now I'm going to swing it back until it lines up. Beautiful. So I'm going to finish up to here. If you did the same thing I did versus working on the opposite side of the swirl, I'm going to finish, and I'm going to decide how far I want to come up because I need to connect off here, and I'm thinking of change because I'm going to change my design a little bit of adding a little bead right here. I'm going to bring my wire up to where I need to connect these two wires together, and then I'm going to stop before I do that so I can show you how to do that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I'm popping back in. I'm putting in my last bead. I'm working on the back right now. And I wanted to show you, and this is really for beginners, when you get in tight quarters like this and you're trying to swing your wire around and get it around that opening, I'm just simply going to bend it like a loop and push it up through that opening in that swirl. And that way I'm not struggling. So now I'm looking at this. I really like it. See the difference? This one, the beads were wrapped on the inside, opposite direction of where the loop is, okay? So we're going to change this design up, which is cool. It's fine with me. It's just going to be another pair of gorgeous earrings. These are longer. See that? I made these bigger. And I'll probably end up keeping these for myself because I like big earrings. I don't like little tiny dangling earrings, and I'm hoping that I'm in my frame here. So now I'm debating on if I want to keep wrapping here and wrap in. If I'm going to do that, then you need to stop now. And you need to add your bead. So here's a little tip. Make sure you add your bead where the front of the bead is dangling down in the front of your earring. So I know that this is my front, So I'm going to bring it down. I really needed to take that wire out. So let's make my life easy. I'm going to leave just 3 wraps. So you want to make sure, all I'm saying is to get your bead in there. It's much easier doing it now that you have a closed off bead than trying to wrap a bead around. So I'm just redesigning my design. That makes any sense. So see how pretty that is? Now you could add amethyst or other beads up the other side. I mean, you could really take off from this. I'm not sure I'm going to add in this attachment here. I added in this piece of wire and I cut it off down there. So I'm not, let me get closer because I feel like I'm moving away. I can't see what's above me, you guys. So I think what I am going to do is I'm going to work off the top of this until I meet up here and I can connect those two. So I'm just going to work off the top. I'm working on this arc and I've got my wire getting a little kink in it, so I'm gonna unkink it. That's another tip. Always stop and make corrections as you're going, or you may not be able to. So let's see how we're lining up here. So I am definitely going to come over now. So I'm right here on the top, and I'm going to bring my wire over. And do I need to bring in one more wrap there? I don't think so. I was just wondering if I was a little premature on making my wrap, and I don't think so. So I'm going to make several wraps until I get down to this gap space, okay? Oops. Got a little tangled there. My wire's getting super springy. So that's cool. I'm really liking that. I'm liking that a lot. I'm liking the different design. I'm definitely going to add a piece in here. Now I want to see, because I was thinking of, you want to go ahead and flatten out your work. That is still not enough space to add a bead. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start wrapping now on the outside of this frame. And I think since I'm changing up my design so much, let's see if I can get a 2mm bead in there. And I may just leave it to that. Just kind of wanted to add one more bead. And I need to come down a little bit more to do that. So you can or cannot. So I will be right back. So I'm adding in my bead. I just came down a little bit and I'm going to close off. You can keep adding in more beads. I'm not sure what I'm going to do now since my design is changed up from what I was originally going to do. So right now, isn't that pretty? That's cool. So we've got definitely more of a, it's going to just change the look, you know, as we're going. So now what we're going to do, now you want to make sure, I'm not going to do both sides because I already know that these are lined up now and I know how many beads I need to use and etc. I will be hammering this later, but because we're making them symmetrical, I don't need to do both sides right now. So I'm going to close up my beads before I knock them over because believe you me, I have many a time. Oh, I wanted to show you just different ways you can wrap beads and make bead elements. Isn't that cute? That could be an earring. These are little tiny 1mm beads down in there and little baby stones. This could be a little earring. Sky's the limit, gang. Okay, so I'm going to leave this wire. I realize it's too much wire. I'm not sure if I'm going to use it for something else yet. I'm going to leave it. I probably have about 12 inches, so 24 inches was too long. But that's okay. I keep all my scrap wire. I use all my scrap wire for everything, even 2 inches of scrap wire. So now we're going to get ourselves, that's for my other earring. We're not going to be using the half round the same now because we're changing up the design. So that's really cool to see how these things happen and how you can modify what you originally wanted to do as you're going. So now I'm going to cut myself, and I thought I already did, but I guess I didn't, 2 inches of 20 gauge round wire. And here's another, I need a big fat plier. Sorry about the arm there, gang. I'm just gonna clean up this end. If you've never straightened out bent wire, you wanna get in the bend. And then you wanna go up and down that wire until you straighten it out. I'm gonna show you another really cool tip of how to straighten wire. And you can harden it at the same time. So I'm just gonna eye this right now. I need about 2 inches, so that's good enough. So let me show you my little trick. And I saw someone do this 4 years ago when I was first doing wire. You can use a spool or you can use your hammering block. And you see how my wire is kind of bent? I can either hand straighten it, use a nylon jaw plier, but this is a short piece of wire, or I'm just going to take my hammering block, and here's my wire, and I'm just going to roll up and down that wire. And you can feel it. It's making my camera shake doing this on the board. But you can feel the wire getting really straight. Look at that. Perfectly straight. Perfectly straight piece of wire. Okay, so now we're going to make, and you want to do these at the same time. Again, it's the same rule of thumb so that you can match your loops up. So I'm going to make a loop. And I already know what I'm going to use here. I am going to use these pliers, and I'm going to smash that tip. And these are great for rounding out that little tip and really giving it a nice point. And then I'm going to get my number 4 on here. And I'm just going to make a loop. I'm going to turn this around. I noticed the little bend in my wire there, and that's not good. I'm going to clean that up. I don't want that wire squared off. And I may have to start with another piece of wire. I'm not liking the bend in that. It's changed the shape of my wire a lot, but we'll see. We'll see what I can get away with, especially round wire once you start tweaking it. Yeah, I'm not happy with that at all. So how much wire do I have here? Yeah, that's not going to work. You know what? I think I'm going to go, I'm not going to do the 20, you guys. I change as I go. If anybody's been watching me, you know. I'm going to use 18 round. I'm not liking the way my 20's turning out. So, where is my round? Okay. So that's about 2 inches. Okay. let's see how that looked. Much better. I'm so much happier with that. Let's see how that looks and what we're going to do now to take off from creating a different earring but with a similar design pattern. Really pretty, so I'm going to clean up that tip and hammer it. Just turning it in a little bit more, holding super firmly, like that. So at this point, you would want to make your matching swirl or spiral, whatever you want to call it, your matching attachment. You're going to be attaching an element to your earring, so you want to make sure that they're matching for each. And that way you can make corrections as you're going. So now I'm just going to hammer this. Where's my hammer? And I know it's going in that way. Here's another tip. Where's my frame? There it is. So I know it's going in this way, so I don't want to hammer on the front. I'm going to hammer on the back. So I'm going to just hold this firmly. Okay, that should do it. Get my half round out of there. I am going to clean this up. Now, if you find something like me, I'm very picky on your piece that you don't like, I'm going to get my file. And right here, where it's a little kind of sharp, I'm going to soften that up. So this is, I believe, 240/180. And I'm just going to come in here and soften that edge. So it's still pointed, but you don't see any nicks or pinches on the wire. Much better. Like that a whole lot better. Now I'm going to get my buffing block and just clean that up again. And I'm really glad I left that wire. Now I'm glad, you know, because I'm improvising, you guys. I'm doing this as I'm going now because of the change up on the initial design I had the intention of doing. Okay. Now I have this excess wire, so it's going to work out perfectly. So I'm going to bring this together like that, but I'm not going to connect these two first until I connect this to my piece, my frame. So I know I need to come through here a couple of more wraps until I get in a good position to attach that added wire that we're using. And if you can see, I'm just pushing the wire through to make my life easier. And we can make adjustments as we go. I'm thinking I want to curl this in a little bit. So let's get my, I don't want to put a dent in my wire, so I'm going to use my flat nose just to make a little bit more of a curl on this. Yeah. Just want to bring it in a little bit. Okay. All right, and we should be done pretty quick here. So now I'm going to make a couple more loops. And I probably could have added another bead, but that's okay. So I'm satisfied with that. So I'm going to come over the top of this attachment wire, and I'm going to come up underneath it, and then I'm going to go in between inside this hole here. And don't worry about your wire fiddling around. I'm going to lift up so I can get up underneath and pull that through. Now, I've heard this weave be referred to as a modified sumac. I believe all weaving came from the ancients when they first started with grasses, and you have to look up the history of weaving. It is not exclusive to wire. Weaving carpets and mats and clothes, and I think wire came in later and took off from all the weaving techniques that were done with hemp and reeds. It's been around a long, long time. Predates 5,000 years before the Phoenicians, so that ought to tell you how long this art has been a while, and why it is a little silly for anybody to get pissy about thinking, they stole my design. At least that's me, you guys, you know. Can't take it with us. Just pay it forward. I'm not sure I like that bead up there. I may later go in and take that out. I like it better now that I turned it. So what we're going to do is take our half round. Oh my God, I think I was out of frame there. We're going to take our half round. I have this tendency to start pushing my hands away. So what we're going to do is we're going to keep weaving this in and adjusting our shape as we're going. So it's really good because I modified this, that I ended up with over 2 feet of weaving wire, because I am definitely using it. Now I'm thinking about the distance of this attachment wire from here, and I'm going to watch that because I don't really want a big spread. You could do a big spread, by the way, so look at that, okay? So here's what I mean. I see things as I go. You can either have it really close, okay, where we're going to cut it down here, or do we want a big spread to where we're weaving here and then we could connect there? The problem being is that we have these beads in the way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shape this to go around my wire like that. I'm even going to give it some more shape, because I'm going to connect it off down here. So I just need to see how far out I want to go. I don't want to go that far out. And I'm liking that. That's going to be a beautiful earring. It would make a really nice pendant too. So let's bring this in a little bit more. Okay, so whatever shape you want there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring this wire, when I'm done here, up and through. So let me weave down and I'll be right back. Okay, so I wanted to pop in because I wanted to share with you how my brain works. Not that you maybe want to know, but what I'm seeing as I'm going. And suddenly I saw that I really love this open space here. Additionally, this wire could have been hammered. So I'm seeing these things as I go, which gives me inspiration to do another earring and even add more dimension and design to that. This could easily be a pendant. So I'm really liking that open kind of excuse me, leaf space. It almost looks like a little leaf right here. So I'm thinking I'm going to stop here and I'm going to start weaving down here and connect this wire off. So that's where I think I'm going to go. So you guys are experiencing this with me. This is how I wrap. Sorry, I needed some water. This is how I wrap. This is how I create things. Like I was playing around with the wire last night on this beautiful piece of Kingman turquoise, and I thought, well, let me play around and see what I think with that. And it's one single wire. It's not 2 wires or adding wires. It's 1 wire starting in the back, creating the bell, bringing it over the front, wrapping it around the back again, bringing it up underneath. So anyways, I decide as I'm going, and then I look at that and decide, do I like it? And if I don't, then I rip it apart. Here's another example of, I've had these absolutely stunning turquoise stones, hand cut since I was 16. I worked at an Indian store called the Indian Chief. It was a turquoise store back in the 70s. And the one of the guys that worked there was Native American, and he cut this stone. So and it's all hand cut. There's no symmetry to it. He hand polished it and everything. So I added this pretty piece of copper wire, and when it dangles from my ear, it's so pretty, and I get a ton of compliments on it. So just giving you ideas of how things work for me, and just trust your intuition. So I'm just going to go ahead and close this off. I'm going to show you how I'm going to do the bottom, because I don't know how I'm going to do the bottom until I do it. And I definitely would have loved to hammer that. Really would have loved to hammer that. I'm just creating more shape here. I like that a lot. And you could add more beads. I'm going to stop here on 3 full wraps. And I'm just going to push that down. And I'll be connecting these 2 pieces right here. And then if you've never snapped your wire, I'm just going to do a wiggle jiggle, and it snaps clean off, and it snaps right where you want it to. So now for the bottom, I'm thinking about using half round not weaving wire, because that just came to me. Here's my scrap, which I save. And if you're new to my channel, I put them all in envelopes, big, fat, wide envelopes like this that says 28. And I just drop my weaving wire in there, or whatever gauge wire I'm using. Okay, so I'm already getting ideas for what I'm going to do here. So I'm going to take this 22 gauge half round, which is way too much wire, because I was initially going to cut it in half anyways. So I'm going to cut that in half, and I'm going to wrap it around the frame on the bottom first. And this is 22 gauge half round. I'm going to slide it down to where it butts up against where this wire is riding over. Okay. And I'm going to do one more wrap this way. Okay, I'm going to slide these together and slide it down right there. Now, I'm going to bring it over this wire to connect it. And I'm going to do that a couple of times. That's really not the right plier. It's too bulky. So I tell you, your tools are everything. They really matter. And I'm not sure if I want to add one more wire there. I'm thinking, let me cut this out the back. So what I'm doing here is another tip. I'm rocking that half round, and it can snap right off for you when you do that. And then just